This November, Montanans decisively put Republicans back in charge of state government. Democrats gained some seats in the House and Senate, something that was widely predicted after new district boundary lines took effect. In nearly all the legislative races, the winning party was predicted far in advance, with few examples of candidates prevailing against the partisan headwinds. Montana PBS's Stan Parker introduces us to two candidates who won in places their respective parties rarely do.
What a great night to be a Republican in America, but what a great night to be a Republican in Montana. Thank you all.
Montana Republicans had a lot to celebrate on election night. At a shindig in Bozeman, cheers abounded as news of GOP control of D.C. and Helena rolled in. If there's a silver lining for Democrats, it's that they did gain several seats in the state legislature. That was expected after new district boundaries, those based on the 2020 census, took effect. But small victories are still victories, with each lawmaker in the far-flung districts of the state celebrating in their own personal ways.
My daughter and my daughter-in-law got me this it was sitting here as a present from them. After I won the election on Tuesday night, I came home and this and a card was sitting there. I told her I'm going to put that on my desk on the floor of the house. So I have it there for now.
Democrat Paul Tuss is what political junkies refer to as an overperformer. As the electorate grows more partisan, it also gets more predictable. Red districts mainly go red, blue districts mainly go blue. Not so for Paul Tuss. He won re-election to a second term in his Havre House district, even though Donald Trump carried his district by a 20-point margin.
Well, I got a yard sign in here. Me too. Take that out. I moved to Havre 24 years ago last week. This goes with all the other yard signs on the back of my truck here. And I came here for my job. It's the job that I continue to have here at Bear Paw Development Corporation as executive director. When I came here, I had originally thought that I'd be here for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And here I am, a quarter of a century later. I live in the same house, in the same neighborhood that I moved into in 2000. I have the same job that I had in 2000, and I couldn't be happier.
On the other side of the aisle, the biggest Republican overperformer was someone who also has deep ties to his community, Gail Lammers of Hardin.
I didn't realize that these races were so predictable, and that ours was kind of a surprise until this week when everybody's like, well, how'd you pull it off? Well, I just know people trust me down here. I just went out and talked to everybody. So, I don't know.
Lammers won a state Senate seat that stretches from South Billings to Ashland, including the Northern Cheyenne and Crow Indian reservations, usually a reliable base for Democrats.
Really great gal who's helped me throughout my campaign. When I was running all over Crow Country, she made this for me, and it's just a really beautiful belt, and I'm going to wear it in the state Senate when I get up there, and it's going to remind me of home, and every time I make a decision up there, I'm going to be thinking of the folks down here in Crow Country.
This is Lammers' first campaign, although he did get a taste of Helena when he was appointed to a vacant House seat by Governor Gianforte. He's mostly known for the business his family has owned for more than a century, Lammers Trading Post.
Comes from Canada, good stuff. I'm the 5th generation. My son, I plan on getting him in there. He's only 2. His name's George, and it's kind of funny. His name's George Gale Lammers. My name's Gale George. My dad's name's George Gale. His dad's name was Gale George. So it kind of goes like that. It's kind of a funny thing. I landed on Gale, I don't know how great that is, but I love it. It's a family name. Everybody says, Gale, huh, interesting. Like, yeah, it's a family name. But anyway.
Lammers and Tuss are the only 2 members of a very exclusive club. They're not the only overperformers, but they are the only ones to win seats where the metrics said they shouldn't have even stood a chance.
We essentially know for roughly 90% of races who's going to win them and who's going to lose them based on the party label that they put next to their name.
Kendra Miller has an encyclopedic knowledge of the legislative districts and the partisan odds of each because she helped draw the map. She was a Democratic pick to sit on the Districting and Apportionment Commission, a panel reconstituted every 10 years to redraw the map after a new census.
Every 10 years, we get new figures for where Montanans live and where people across the country live. And then it's the job of the Districting and Apportionment Commission to adjust boundary lines to deal for those population changes. So at the end of the day, it's about equal representation.
The commission has 5 members, 2 picked by Democrats, 2 by Republicans, and a chair selected by either the other commissioners or the state Supreme Court if they can't agree. That was the case this go-around.
We have a much more public process than most states. In a lot of states, maps get drawn behind closed doors and they get rolled out on the floor and voted on within a couple of hours. Like that's not an abnormal process in other states. And we had dozens and dozens of public hearings. We drove all over the state to listen to people. We took public comment, stacks and stacks of public comment that we'd all be reading through before the meeting. So we have a really public process.
Miller had a fair bit of disagreement with her Republican co-commissioners, including on the final map. The chair ended up casting a tie-breaking vote in favor of the Democrats' proposal. Republican Commissioner Jeff Essman believes the final map diluted the voices of rural voters by lumping them in with urban districts.
If you draw logical communities of interest, then you'll have urban districts, you would have suburban districts. You won't have a district like 57 that's downtown Bozeman and rural Park County. Does not meet the definition of a community of interest.
Simply put, the Republicans thought you should draw a map based solely on the constituents of each individual district. The Democrats thought you should run the numbers to see if the map you drew broadly matches voter support for each party.
Our legislature should look like the state as a whole. So what I wanted to make sure was that it was never the map itself that was undermining the will of Montana voters.
The commission also openly considered how competitive it considered each district to be. The metric they settled on was to take a sample of 10 races over the 3 most recent elections and see how often voters in each proposed district pulled the lever for the same party. It turns out it was a great predictor of how Montanans would go on to vote in 2024.
It ultimately predicted 122 out of 125 seats, so 98% of the districts. We knew more than 2 years before the election last week who was going to win them based on party label. And so that really stood out to me that, man, are we divided and polarized.
One thing Essman and Miller do agree on, even though they approach the issue differently, is that a lack of competition is no good for Montana voters.
If you've got 135 out of 150 seats in the safe category, that to me means it's going to inexorably lean to less campaigning on the part of the candidates. And I think that's a problem. It's good to listen to your voters, especially those that don't agree with you, because you end up representing all those people, whether they voted for you or not. And most, 80-90% of the bills the legislature deals with are not particularly partisan. And I hope that these safe districts won't really degrade the effort that the candidates make when they run for office, and that's my biggest long-term concern.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Really?
How are you?
Here, let me get those.
I got some presents for you.
Thanks.
I have friends of mine that have come to Havre to visit me, and whether we're going into a coffee shop or a restaurant or a bar or the hardware store, they tease me about being an old-fashioned politician, where it just so happens that I know a lot of people.
How would you define old school politician?
I think you define that as somebody that is very involved in the retail politics of their community, right? That is very visible in the community and pops into the barber shop to say hello, or pops into the hardware store to buy a bolt for a project that you're working on at home, and you end up talking for 25 minutes to somebody about something completely different than the project that you're working on. Being present in the community, not just during campaigns, but literally every day. And I think that's what I've done fairly successfully in this community.
The data may be powerful, but so is relationship.
We have so much data available to us now. So from that standpoint, I think we know too much about our voters. You know, I think it was better when you had to go out and learn about your voters by knocking on their door, looking them in the eye, and asking them what they thought about an issue. I did that, and frankly, it was a part of the legislative job I like best, is talking to people. I hope that good legislators in the future will continue to engage in that effort, because I think it'll make them better legislators, and their voters are going to be happier with the results they get.
You know what? They sent us up to Helena for orientation pretty quick, and we were up there, and I've been up there learning a little bit. And I've looked at some of the data, and I've talked with some of these data guys. You know, they send you stuff. They say, hey, you know, this looks like this, this, and that. But I don't know. You kind of get more of a feeling when you get out there with people and you go talk to them all. You're still rocking them Cowboys, ain't you? Good to see you, brother. And you kind of know, like I kind of knew I had a really good chance, just because of the amazing amount of positive energy that, you know, from going around to all the districts and talking with everybody. But I can see like where the data-driven thing, you know, is a big factor, but there's a lot of hope out there to break the mold.
Tuss and Lammers show the secret to breaking the mold is really no secret at all. Just old-fashioned politicking and being a consistent, active presence in the community over decades, or even generations. It's hard to capture that in a spreadsheet, and no wonder the metrics failed to predict their success. For Impact, I'm Stan Parker.
The lawmakers of the 2025 session met in Helena the week after the election to select their leadership. Republicans chose Matt Regier of Kalispell as Senate President and Brandon Lear of Savage as Speaker of the House. Democrats chose Pat Flowers of Belgrade as Senate Minority Leader and Katie Sullivan of Missoula as House Minority Leader.